Okay, for most practice owners, the biggest expense isn't rent or equipment or payroll. It is lost income, money you should be making but aren't, often because of weak or outdated marketing systems. So in this episode, I'm joined by Neil Trickett of Practice Promotions. He's going to break down what great marketing actually looks like. He's going to reveal the gold standards that the top practices are using to attract more patients and grow fast. The next 30 minutes could be the most profitable of your month, so you don't want to miss it. Practice owners, tired of working hard but not seeing the financial results you deserve? I'm Eric Miller, and my best-selling book, How to Become a Financial Beast, is your game changer. Learn how to maximize profits, pay yourself right, and build wealth outside your practice. Download now for free. Hey, welcome back to the Financial Beast podcast. I am your host, Eric Miller, co-owner and chief financial advisor at Econologics Financial Advisors. We help healthcare owners acquire, control, and expand their money through our premier financial advice for not only owners and associates as well. You can certainly check us out at econologicsfinancialadvisors.com. And as always, please give us a share, a like, and subscribe to the channel so that we can continue to grow and reach more healthcare owners. Speaking of healthcare owners, actually ex-healthcare owners, now marketing owners right now. We're going to bring on someone that's going to talk about one of the most important subjects from a financial perspective that I think is overlooked. But we're going to bring on Mr. Neil Trickett, the CEO, co-owner of Practice Promotions, and he has been really in the marketing space for, has it been over 10 years now? Pretty close to?
Yeah, going on 13 years now.
Oh my gosh, 13 years. I met Neil quite a while ago when he actually owned a physical therapy practice in Florida with his incredibly lovely wife, Amy. And now he is just the marketing guru for physical therapists. So thank you, Neil. Was that a warm enough
that was beautiful.
Introduction right there?
I love it.
So one of the things that I definitely wanted to talk about, because the environment of where we're in right now in healthcare, the environment in the physical therapy space, you talk to a lot of physical therapists, probably more than we do. We talk to a lot of physical therapists on the financial side. And, you kind of hear the same things, reverberating, reimbursements are being cut, profit margins are being squeezed. It's tough to get people in the door. I mean, there's probably a list of things that you probably just put on autopilot and hear every single day. One of the things, though, that we talk a lot about is like what the biggest expense is of any practice, like the biggest expense. And it's my belief that it is money that should have been made and hasn't been made. Do you agree with me on that? I hope.
Yeah, absolutely. It's okay. It's the silent killer, right, of the practices, because it's something that it's a little difficult to measure, and it's usually out of sight and out of mind. But unless you're really paying attention to that, that's what can hold you back from substantial growth in your practice, financial well-being. And with good financial well-being, it's not just about obviously the profits that you can bring home to create the lifestyle that you want, but how do you support your team? How do you give raises? How do you give them opportunities for growth within your practice? That all comes from money, right? And being able to produce more money than you spend. And a good chunk of that is, again, if your practice is not as efficient as it should be, if you're losing patients that never came in the door, but you really didn't know about, you're losing a lot of money at the end of the day.
So that's well said. Let's put some math behind that, or what? How do you quantify that for somebody? Is there a method that you use to quantify that, where you're working with someone, say, hey, there's X amount of lost income? Is there a way that you can show that to them?
Yeah, very simple. What you want to do is you actually want to calculate what your maximum revenue could be, right? And then what your actual revenues right now from the patients that you're seeing. We actually have a real simple calculator on our website called a revenue ratio calculator. So the simple thing to do there is look at, okay, what's my average reimbursement per visit? How many patient visits am I seeing now on a weekly basis? And so that gives me the revenue that I made for the week. And then if I look at the space that I'm in, typically for about 1,000 square feet, you should be able to do about 125 plus patient visits in that space. Now, it might need some, finagling, movement, whatever you need to do there to create that. But I would say that's a, pretty robust number that you could be achieving there. So, in a 2,000 square foot facility, you should be able to see about 250 patient visits per week. And that would be, you'd be jamming 100% full. And then you got to look at, okay, where am I at now for that? And then you can divide those two and get your percentage out of it. So you might be, say, if I'm at like 180 patient visits, but I should be able to get 250 in that space, that might mean hiring somebody. It might need to keep it full with new patients. But that's going to give you, let's say, 70 something percent revenue ratio. And then your goal is, okay, how do I plan to squeak that number up as much as possible, which might mean looking at hiring to deliver more, or maybe my marketing systems aren't where they need to be to have consistency there, or maybe my internal processes need to get better because patients come in for 1 or 2 visits and then they drop off. So there could be a lot of factors that you're looking at. But I think ultimately, if you know that I need to be hitting this amount of visits in the space that I have with this price point that I need to be hitting, that gives you a great benchmark to make a lot of decisions off of.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, look, there's so much space that you have that you want to utilize to get maximum value. If we're treating this practice like an investment, which it is, and getting it to its max capacity is one of the primary goals, at least from a business and financial side. You want to see as many patients as you can.
Yeah.
And once you bridge the gap on that, I'm telling you, like from a financial perspective, oh my God, your lives are so much easier the closer that you get to that number.
The other thing that I've seen a lot of practices start to tackle better today than they have in the past is knowing their ideal reimbursement per visit. So we've got to this point where we felt that we only have to take what the insurance company gives us, right? And we've got this dwindling reimbursement for years, and Medicare has been the gold standard for what reimbursement is, and then the private insurance companies, kind of piggyback off of that metric. But one thing I did in my practice way back when was that I actually said, okay, this is the amount that I need to make per visit to pay my staff well, to have X amount of profitability at the end of the day. And so once I really knew that number, then I was in my head, I would say, I'm not going to take that insurance over there because they pay less than that. I'm not going to take that, or I'm going to go out of network with this particular insurance because I need to be at that, level of reimbursement per visit. And I think we sometimes get into the trap of feeling that we don't have a choice when it comes to the pricing model that we should have in our clinic. But you do have a choice, and you do have the ability to go out of network with insurances. Because in today's world, a lot of patients don't even ever meet their deductible in network. So what's the point, right? You might as well treat them in network or out of network because they may not even ever get to their deductible, and you're going to, treat them anyway. But there's also lots of things for us to look at, right? We could be adding in many other cash line services into our practice. And there's lots of practices now that are seeing the light, and they're realizing we have a lot of opportunity here to help service our patients even more by bringing in other lines of service. That could be anything from stretch services, laser, new fits. I mean, there's a whole gamut of different services we can provide for our patients. And, one thing that I've seen over time is we service a lot of Canadian clients. And in Canada, what's really fascinating is they've definitely been ahead of the curve compared to the US in that they've offered a lot more services in-house. Traditionally, you'll have your PT, your chiro, your acupuncture, your massage therapist, all in house, and so it's this nice one stop shop for patients going into those clinics, and they're able to obviously generate more revenue because there's more services that the patient can choose from to get better.
But if you don't know what your number is to start, then you're just flying blind. So to your point, you really have to dial in what that number is on a patient basis of what you need to bring in to function a profitable and solvent organization.
Mm-hmm.
And then, if the traditional reimbursement isn't going to do it, you're going to have to supplement it with other things to be able to get to that number.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's not working right now in marketing for PTs?
What's not working?
Yeah, I thought I'd throw a little loop in there of like, what's not working.
Appreciate that. But yeah, let's. That's such a variable question because it really depends on the location, where the clinic's at. The one thing that I see clinic owners do get into trouble with is that they chase the shiny object.
Yeah.
So they see the latest thing on Facebook or Instagram, and they're like, "Oh wow, this this new function, right? And I'm going to start doing this thing," and then they get stuck, and 5 months later they're not really getting anything out of it, and then they're off to the next thing. So you got to have a plan first. You got to know what's the tried and true methods for getting people into your practice, and then how can you layer on technologies, automations, things like that to achieve your goals. So yeah, that's the thing that I see don't work for practices is when they don't have a plan, when they do shoot off in different directions, trying the latest, greatest thing and expecting it to be the miracle button, the easy button for the practice.
Are owners too impatient with their marketing strategies? Do they get too impatient sometimes?
Yeah, that can happen. You got to realize that marketing is like a big flywheel. It takes effort to get it started, and momentum starts to build over time. So you can't, put an ad up and expect in 1 week that it's going to produce you a high volume of new patients. It just doesn't work like that. Like even for Google Ads, which is pretty quick, it takes about 30 days for Google's algorithm to learn how to deliver your ads to the, different audiences out there. And so you start to get some results in that time period, but they're small. And usually as you get into the second 30 days, then it starts to get better. And then after about 60 days, now it's really learned a lot and delivering your ads well to people, and you start to see a lot more traction. So that's, people can be impatient and they just don't have the understanding of like how things work when it comes to the different algorithms and learning out there. And even repetition of message. So let's face it, in today's world, your patients out there, your prospective patients, are inundated with all kinds of marketing messages from all kinds of industries, and you've got to compete in that sphere. So repetition of message is huge. It might take you 7 or 10 times of people seeing your stuff to actually decide to look at you a bit further. So things are not going to happen off of you putting out one email, right, or one ad. So you got to have some expectation of repetition of message for things to happen.
Been reading that book Traction. I'm sure you read that before. Have you seen that book?
Yeah.
Talks about like, the inner circle or bullseye or whatever that would be. There are definitely things that work in PT that I know you specialize in. What would you say is working really well right now from a marketing perspective in PT? Like, what are some, like, these are just non-negotiables. You got to be doing these things, and you got to be doing them really, really well right now.
Yeah, there's, in our book, I really researched this, broke this down. What is the top 10% of practices really doing well? When it comes to like just a strategy, first off, the key thing to really look at is how can you be more discovered online? That's so critical in today's world. So how are you showing up in Google, and not just at the top of Google? You got to be all over Google. So you've got to be at the very top, which is now, depending on what's happening, could be AI search. Then you've got Google Ads, then you got your local pack section, and then you get your top 10 organic section. So you've got 4 or 5 potential spots on page 1 of Google that you could be in. If you can command all 5 of those, wow, you're going to get really noticed. So online discoverability is massive. And even with social media, so social search optimization is another thing to really work on today. So how are your Facebook, Instagram, TikTok profiles set up and linked in a way that is favorable for your practice to be discovered online for different searches on social media? So all that comes into online discoverability. So the better a clinic does at that, they really start to rocket with the amount of new patients that they're coming in. And then secondly, what you got to realize is that even though we have all these different channels to work with out there, people's key decision still comes heavily off of your website.
Mm-hmm.
So people start to pique their interest as you are found more online, but you have to develop their interest through your website. And that's where you really need to be able to speak to them, make your website very professional, show what it's like in the clinic. So you have great custom photography and videography on your website in there. You have lots of testimonials, case studies, reviews. You're speaking specifically to someone's pain. If they're coming in with a rotator cuff injury, do you have something about shoulders and rotator cuffs on your pages specifically? So you're speaking to that person. And that goes back to what we call website conversions. So let's just say a clinic can get 1,000 people a month coming to their website. Most practices are going to get about 2% of those people actually turning into scheduled appointments.
Wow.
So 1,000 people coming, 20 people actually get on the books. Now, if you could increase that percentage by just 2%, you've doubled your number of new patients coming in from 20 to 40 with a 2% increase. So working on your website's conversions capability can make astronomical changes in the volume of patients coming into your clinic. And so there's a lot of things.
Is that hard to get that kind of viewership, or so to speak, on a website rather quickly? I'm sure it has to be done in concert with a lot of other things that you're doing, because you're trying to drive people there, right?
It takes a little bit of nuance, and it's not necessarily about getting more people to the website. It's just getting more people on the website to stay and to develop their interest and to take action.
Mm-hmm.
So that's one of the critical areas. And sometimes, again, what we might fall the trap into is thinking, hey, I've got to get a lot more people to my website. But the people that come to your website already aren't doing anything. So there's different tools and technologies that we can look at for that. One's called a heat map, so you can see how people are actually behaving on your website. How do they scroll down? How do they click on different buttons? And that can tell you a lot about, people are scrolling down to this part of my website and then they don't do anything. All right, well, I need to change something in that part of the website that's boring them and not causing them to look on. So that can give you a lot of information about how to change things on your website. It might be a picture, it might be a button, it might be a headline. So that can give you a lot of data on how to make quick changes in your website. Another thing that we do with construction of a website is we actually use AI for our graphic designers to look at how people's eyes track on the screen. And so you want to have a real smooth way.
Now you're freaking me out, Neil.
Yeah, man.
Right,
there's all kinds of crazy stuff out there. But if you know how someone's eyes are going to look around the screen, then you can design headlines, buttons, colors, all kinds of things like that, so that you're going to get people to stay and pay attention and look around, and obviously then take action. So there's a lot of things that you can do with that, but if you work on it, if you know that you need to work on that, you can get help to do it. That's not something you should be doing as a practice owner anyway. You should leverage an outside agency or someone to help you with the technical stuff. But hey, I've done some tracking on my website. I know that people are not really staying very long. I'm losing a lot of opportunity here. So let me work on that, right? That's just an important thing to notice. And then finally, the key thing that we have a lot of leverage over is patient marketing. So how are we, if we're an established practice, all those people that we've treated before that love us and like us, how are we staying in communication with them? And how are we developing them to continue to see us as the experts to turn to, and to also then send their friends and family to us to go back to their doctor and say great things about us? that takes marketing, that takes effort, that takes good communication and skill. And so you need to have consistency there. You need to have a plan in place. You need to be sending good marketing information to that list on a consistent basis. And a lot of clinics make the mistake of, I send a birthday email once a year. That's not really developing your list. But that is your gold mine in your practice. So if you have efforts on your social media, you have good email marketing to your patients, you even do direct mail to your patients list, there's a lot of opportunity to get people back in for care, but then also to be reminded to send their friends and family to you.
And can you get more tactical on that? Like, what are some of those things that you would do to your existing list? I mean, I know you mentioned... Yeah,
a big thing is content marketing, right? Okay. So that really boils down to, you have a ton of expertise in your clinic. And how are you continuing to share that expertise and knowledge with your patient list, with your customer list? So things like putting a blog out every couple of weeks, right? It's not that hard to do. And you can write great content on there, and that can go out as an email to your list of people, and it can be very informative and educational. Mm-hmm. And then someone who, let's say, came in for an ankle sprain to your practice didn't realize that you treated neck pain and headaches, and you wrote an article about neck pain and headaches. Wow, I've got that problem too. Let me come back in. Let me give them a call because I had a good experience there before. So blogs are really critical. A patient newsletter has always been a standard. It's a great way for you to continually show what's happening within the clinic, provide useful tips. You can talk about, patient success stories. You can talk about, you're showing that, one of our staff members got a new certification in something. It's a great way for you to tell the stories from within the clinic and keep that relationship going, that rapport going with your customer lists.
How much of a part does marketing, partake in recruiting?
In today's world, big. Yeah. It's more and more clinics are having this realization, especially the bigger that you get and the more staff that you have. And naturally, you're going to have a bit more turnover the larger you get. You need to fill those seats. And whether that's professional staff or admin staff, you need to then make your hiring and recruiting lines a lot stronger. And marketing plays a big role in that, because people have a lot more access online to the reputations of those clinics. And so they're going to check you out way before they ever submit a resume to you. They're going to look at how you show up on Google. What are your Google reviews like? What does your Facebook look like? What does your website look like? Does it look like a great place to work? Have they heard great things about you? What are your patients saying about you? So they have access to all this information. And the better the clinic is at marketing and branding themselves that way, they naturally start to attract more of the top talent that is out there versus your traditional, let me post a job up on Indeed because someone left, and now the people who are on Indeed, maybe they got fired from another job and now they're looking around, right? So that's not really necessarily the right person that you want to get in front of. But if you can polish up your brand and market heavier, then you can attract a lot more top talent to your practice.
Yeah, I think people want to, number one, make sure that they're joining a group that they feel, I guess, there's a warmth to it, like I think you need to make sure that the personality of the practice and like that I think that's important to people. I mean, obviously they want to get paid, people want to get paid, but they also want to know that they're going to be part of something.
Yeah. The number one driver for hiring is not money.
Yeah.
And if you're just advertising on money, you're going to get the wrong person, and they'll destroy your clinic from the inside out. But like you said, compensation is important. It's definitely part of the conversation, and you are going to want to pay well or do some sort of commission bonus structure, ideally for like your PTs, so that they have earning capabilities. And you've got the ability to draw top talent that way. But what they're really looking for is professional development, growth, mentorship, other things that are, intangible kind of within the clinic. And you can see that online. You can see that within a practice and how things look there. one of the things that we're pushing right now is a whole market to hire process in the clinics, and so our philosophy is, still keep doing the job boards, your Indeed, your ZipRecruiters, all that kind of stuff. But what we hear time and time again is that people have such a hard time getting professional staff off of there because you're fighting with everybody else for the same talent. But how can you stand out from the crowd? And that you can really leverage your website and your online discoverability in order to do that. So first off, we really help them build out a huge careers page. And you got to be able to show what it's like to work within the clinic. You got to show your culture, all those great pictures of events that you've done together as a team. Talk about your mentorship programs. If you have students, your internship programs and all those kind of things, you can do that right within your website. And then we actually put a recruiting center within their website too. So now instead of your job posts being on a job board, your job posts are within your website.
Yeah.
And what's cool about that is that whenever someone is searching for jobs online, and most people will go through Google first, they'll look for physical therapy jobs near me. Google actually replaces the normal search with what's called Google for Jobs. And so Google for Jobs will pull up, and it looks just like a normal search, but it's all job posts. And you'll see all the Indeed posts, the ZipRecruiter posts, like all those things will pull up in that Google search. But with the configuration of the job posts within the website, you can actually get your job post in that website to now rank up in Google for Jobs. So people will find you. People will find your job post on your website instead of going to Indeed. And what's great about that is that they click on it, all that information pulls up right into Google, and then they can click to see more or apply through your website. And so now you bring the person to your website exclusively, and they can start to check you out. Versus if they go off to Indeed, you're with hundreds of other employers out there trying to track them with just text-based stuff.
Yeah.
So it's a much better experience. And what we hear time and time again from our clients is that they get a higher quality candidate coming through, because that's what people are looking for. That are top producers, top talent, is they're looking for that camaraderie and that standout clinic. And if you bring it in through your website and you have that built out correctly, you can really show that.
I love it. How often should owners be looking at their marketing stats? Is that something that every week, once a month? Like how often are you doing reporting to everyone? Mm-hmm. What's that look like, and what are some of the things that you focus on?
Yeah, I think the key thing there for practice owners really to look at. It's good to look at on a weekly basis, but more of a deep dive on a monthly basis, because you can drive yourself crazy on a weekly basis. Marketing will be up, it'll be down, it'll be up, it'll be down. But how is the trend over the month, right? And then even how is the trend over the quarter if you have like a longer campaign? Mm-hmm. So it's good to keep a pulse, keep a look on it on a weekly basis, but then really pull all your metrics, really have a look, see how things are that month compared to last month. And then, did you get to where your targets are? Set your new targets for next month, and then keep moving that way.
And you're basically looking at like, hey, how'd the website do? How did the newsletter pull? How did some of these outside the Google? I mean, is that what you're basically looking at? Just like, what are these core things that mm-hmm. are designed to drive in, new patients? Those are the things that you're looking at.
So the goal here is to create clarity for yourself. And time again, I talk to so many practice owners, they don't know what is working in their marketing. That can be one of the most frustrating things, because you're throwing money at something and it's just not working. Or you don't think it's working, but it might be working in a different way. So what you really need to look at is how people are finding you, right? So like, how many times are you coming up in Google searches? How many times are people looking at your Google business profile? That's a big thing. How many people are calling from your Google business profile? How many people are clicking from there? That can give you a lot of information of how well you're doing online, right? And then you want to have enough metrics through your website where you can say, this many people filled out a form on my website, and you need call tracking in place. So how many people actually called from my website? And if you have the right things in place, you can actually track how someone found you online, Did they come through Google organically? Did they come from an ad? How much time did they spend on my website? Did they call in? Did they fill out a form? And then you can track a little bit deeper. You can say, oh, did they actually, from that lead, did they become a patient in the door? Do they schedule? Right. So there's different systems you can have in place to do that. But the more information that you have, the easier it is to make decisions. And so that's where I see clinics struggle, is they don't have enough marketing tracking systems in place to make sense of it all. So you really need to know, like, hey, what's happening with Google? What's happening with social media? How is that reflected in number of people coming to my website and engaging with me? And how many of those people actually scheduling appointments, directly from that? And how many people actually showed up in the clinic?
And then doctor referrals, it's still important, right? But, what are we getting away from that, or are we reinforcing that? Or that used to be the bread and butter. I remember, as of 10 years ago. Yeah.
Man, I knocked on hundreds of doctors' doors over the years. Yeah. Lots of lunch and learns and dropping off donuts and all that fun stuff.
Yeah.
It's still there, and networks, physician networks are still an integral part of our relationship in the medical world. So we need to have something in place to keep those relationships fostered. It's not like it was in the past, where that was our predominant way of getting referrals and new patients. So we had to spend a lot of time, knocking on doors, meets and greets, things like that. In today's world, you're much better focusing on direct to consumer marketing, but still have your network that you're trying to work from a physician side. I would say that in today's world, we have about, if a practice can get to about 50% of their practice being able to, sorry, that was just coming through there. If you have about 50% of your practice being able to have past patients and referrals, patient referrals, you're in a power position there. And then you have, say, about 35 to even 40% of your practice coming from direct marketing, and then you have about 10% of your practice coming from physician referrals. You're going to grow fast from that perspective. The one stat I saw recently that made a lot of sense to me was I think it's about 74% of physicians are now part of networks, like they're part of a hospital system, or they're part of a bigger corporate chain or something like that. And that changed. Before COVID, that was changing quickly, but I think it was closer to like 50% prior to COVID. So in that world, in the physician world, they, got tired of running their own private practices, and they went more to, let me work for a bigger group, or let me work for a hospital system as a physician, because it makes my life a lot easier. But then we have to realize that all those referrals now get a lot more internal referred to the hospital networks.
Yes. I feel all of this information that you have should be in a book somewhere.
It is.
It is?
Yes. Totally is. You got our own Market to Grow book right here.
There we go.
Free. Everybody can get it. Market to Grow, Hire, and Profit is what you get out of that book. There are those 3 strategies which put together over many years of working with top performing clinics. So it really gives you the strategy of how to compete in today's marketplace.
Where do they get it at?
You can go right to our website, practicepromotions.net. The book's right on there. You can just get it right through there. And we got tons of downloads and all kinds of blog articles and stuff for you, how to market your practice, and everything from starting up a clinic to we're working with 160 plus location clinics, and kind of the enterprise level of information that you need there too.
I love it. Last question. What's the most important thing that you're working on right now that you feel will make a huge difference?
We are working a lot right now with AI. So right now, there was a massive change in this last couple of weeks with Google. And Google really launched a big change in how they do search using AI. So we've been starting to get familiar with, if you put a Google search in, the Gemini stuff comes in at the top, the little, information AI for us. But Google's really started to go all in on that. And what they're doing is that they're actually going to include more of like local searches right into that. They're going to have anything from even e-commerce is going to be done through the Google platform. And they're trying to change Google almost into like a Chat GPT where you stay within Google for all your information. And then maybe last minute you get out to your booking. That will be a little bit different for, say, e-commerce brands versus a local, physical therapy practice, for example. There's still going to be a lot more around local search for that. But that's one thing that we're putting a lot of a focus, a lot of attention right now, because there's so much change happening within, Google, within AI search. And so we're putting a lot of effort into that.
Love it. All right, folks. Well, look, you could do it yourself. You could go on YouTube and try to figure this out, or you could just hire a pro. And I would suggest that if you're in the PT space, that you just hire a pro and go with someone that has done it, that has, a good majority of PT clients, that knows the industry, that was in the industry, and that understands, the direction that PT practices are trying to go. So I would highly recommend that you guys give Anil and his team a call. It is well worth it. So thanks, buddy. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Eric. Pleasure being here.